New York City, 1977 summer, hot summer, but a chill over the city. Young couples are being targeted. Seemingly random. A killer. Newspapers are calling him the .44 caliber killer. Panic is rising. No one feels safe. And then he starts sending letters. Chilling letters. Taunting letters. Signed, Son of Sam.
It's a case that really captures the imagination, doesn't it? The blend of the era, the city on edge.
Yeah, and today we're doing a deep dive into the Son of Sam case.
Yeah.
Going way beyond just those headlines. We've got court documents, psychological profiles. We even have some of Berkowitz's own letters.
Oh, wow.
And firsthand accounts from people who lived through it all. We're going to unpack who David Berkowitz was, the timeline of his crimes, and
the big question.
the big questions.
Did he act alone?
Right. Possible accomplices, satanic cults. Some people think he didn't act alone, even to this day. Now, fair warning, dark story, disturbing content.
Of course.
But our aim is to understand, not to sensationalize. So, to start, who was David Berkowitz? He was born Richard David Falco, adopted just days after birth by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz. They gave him a stable home, but his childhood was
Well,
turbulent.
yeah, I read about some of that.
There were signs, even early on, a fascination with fire, petty theft, even reports of bullying other kids. He ends up joining the army, serves in Korea, gets an honorable discharge, but then he tracks down his birth mother. And that's where things seem to take a really dark turn.
Yeah, it's the timing, isn't it? He's already exhibiting some troubling behaviors. But discovering his birth parents, experiencing that rejection, it seems to trigger a major identity crisis.
Right.
Forensic anthropologists have actually called this the primary crisis of his life.
Wow.
To have your whole sense of self shaken, then try to re-enter civilian life, find your place.
Yeah, and at that age, it's a vulnerable time,
Next
like
to
a
go.
domino. It sets off this whole chain reaction.
Precisely.
So Berkowitz is back in New York, bouncing between jobs. He ends up working for the Postal Service, but then Christmas Eve, 1975, the violence begins.
Okay.
And it's not with a gun, he starts with a knife.
Oh, really? I didn't realize that.
2 separate stabbings. One victim was only 15, a girl named Michelle Foreman. She survived, but was seriously injured.
Oh.
And what's interesting is that after these attacks, he moves to Yonkers, almost like he was testing the waters, seeing what he could get away with.
It's like a trial run, almost.
Yeah. Then July 1976, he switches to a .44 caliber handgun.
Okay.
Donna Loria, 18 years old, and her friend Jody Valenti are in a parked car. Berkowitz just walks up and opens fire.
Oh, gosh.
Donna is killed instantly. Jody is wounded but survives.
This is awful.
This shooting sets the pattern that will terrify the city. Young women, often with their boyfriends, targeted seemingly at random.
This is what really grabbed the headlines at the time.
Right.
That sense of randomness. It's terrifying.
Now, this switch from a knife to the .44. It's significant, right? It suggests an escalation, not just in the level of violence, but in his psychological state, too.
Absolutely. And the choice of weapon is really revealing. Knives are intimate, close range. Switching to a firearm, especially a powerful one like a .44, suggests this need for distance.
Yeah.
Depersonalization. He's not just injuring his victims, he's obliterating them.
Wow.
It's a move toward dehumanizing his victims, maybe as a way to distance himself from the act itself.
That's a really good point. It's easy to get caught up in the horror of what happened and forget that there's a human mind behind it all, a deeply disturbed one, but still, making deliberate choices.
Exactly. There's a thought process, a method to this madness, however twisted it may be.
So the attacks continue. October 1976. Carl De Niro and Rosemary Keenan are parked. And get this. They're actually discussing the recent shootings.
Oh, wow.
When Berkowitz opens fire again, Carl is hit in the head, but incredibly, he survives.
Oh, my goodness.
He had a metal plate in his head from a previous injury. They think Berkowitz mistook Carl for a woman. He had long hair.
So random.
Right. The randomness, the almost accidental nature of it, it just adds to the terror.
Of course. You never know who's next.
By now, police are starting to see a pattern. Young couples, parked cars, late at night. But they still don't know WHO is behind it all. Public fear is escalating. November 1976. Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lamano are chatting on a porch. Berkowitz approaches. He asks for directions in a high-pitched voice, like a ruse, then pulls out the .44.
Oh, wow. Chilling.
Donna is wounded. Joanne is paralyzed.
It's just heartbreaking.
What strikes me is how he's taking control in these situations.
Yeah.
He's not just reacting, he's creating scenarios. He's using tactics.
Right.
The high-pitched voice, It's like a disguise. It's about control, power over his victims.
That's a classic hallmark of this type of offender, that need for control. It's as much a part of the motivation as anything else.
He's playing a deadly game with the lives of innocent people.
And leaving a city absolutely paralyzed by fear.
Exactly. And this reign of terror, it's really just getting started. January 1977, Christine Freund and her boyfriend John Deal, they're on their way to a dance. And like so many New Yorkers at the time, they're talking about the son of Sam case.
Oh, wow.
And they become his next victims. Christine, she doesn't survive.
It's so sad.
The press, they go into overdrive at this point, headlines everywhere. It feels like the whole city is holding its breath.
Yeah, you can imagine. That feeling of dread, just waiting for the next one.
And then March 1977, Virginia Voskerikian, a Columbia University student, she's walking home alone and she's shot and killed.
This one's different, right?
Yeah. This time, no boyfriend, no parked car, just a young woman walking down the street. This really terrifies people, even more, because it feels like anyone could be next.
Yeah, it really shatters that illusion of safety, doesn't it?
It does.
And it's important to remember the context here. New York in the 70s, it was already struggling. Economic hardship, crime, this feeling of urban decay, and then the Son of Sam case. It just amplifies all of those anxieties.
Right. It's like preying on these existing fears and uncertainty that are already there.
Exactly. People were changing their routines, avoiding going out at night, the city that never sleeps. It was starting to lose its vitality.
It's like he was attacking the very soul of New York City.
Precisely. And what's interesting about Virginia Voskerikian's murder, it deviates from his pattern.
It does.
It suggests maybe a shift in his psychology, a growing desperation or frustration.
Right.
This lack of a clear pattern. It's almost more frightening than his usual MO.
Because it feels like anyone could be next.
Exactly. No one is safe.
And then April 1977, another turning point in the case. Alexander Issa and Valentina Suriani, shot in their car. Valentina dies instantly. But it's what police find at this crime scene that changes everything.
The letter.
The first Son of Sam letter. It's addressed to Captain Joseph Borelli, one of the lead detectives on the case. This letter, it's chilling, Misspellings, ramblings about a demon dog, and a signature Mr. Monster. It's disturbing stuff, and I think it's important for our listeners to really understand the tone, the content of this letter. So I'm going to read a brief excerpt.
Okay.
He writes, I am deeply hurt by your calling me a women hater. I am not, but I am a monster. I am the Son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Sometimes he ties me up to the back of the house. So what's your take on this? What does this letter reveal about Berkowitz's mindset at this stage?
Well, this letter, it's a game changer. It gives the killer a voice, an identity. It reveals this deep-seated need for attention, notoriety. He's crafting a persona, a narrative. And he's inviting the public, the police, into his twisted world.
He's becoming a character in his own story.
Exactly. And the media, of course, they amplify this. The Son of Sam becomes a headline sensation, a figure of urban legend, which, that just fuels Berkowitz's narcissism. It gives him the recognition he craves.
And it intensifies the fear gripping the city.
Of course. It becomes this feedback loop.
Right.
Terror, media attention, more terror.
Now, this wasn't the only letter Berkowitz sent. In May 1977, 2 more letters. Taunting police. One ends with, yours in murder, Mr. Monster. But then he sends a letter that really throws things off balance.
Okay, this is the one to Jimmy Breslin.
Right. Jimmy Breslin, huge newspaper columnist at the time. He gets this letter, and it's different. The language is more sophisticated. The presentation is more deliberate. It even includes this strange logo. And it ends with a chilling question, what will you have for July 29th, the anniversary of his first shooting?
Wow. So why target Breslin? Why him specifically?
Was it a power play? An attempt to control the narrative even more?
It's a fascinating question. Targeting Breslin, this prominent public figure, it suggests this desire for validation. He wants to engage with someone powerful.
Right.
Almost as if he wanted to be seen as an equal, a worthy adversary.
It's unsettling.
Absolutely. And it also raises questions about his understanding of media and its power. He's not just a killer. He's a manipulator. He's playing with the public's perception of him.
This is where things get really unsettling. The NYPD, they're baffled by this letter. The graphic design suggests someone with specialized skills, So they start consulting with comic book artists.
Oh, wow.
Thinking a professional letterer might be involved. As the anniversary of that first shooting approaches, the pressure is immense.
You can imagine.
In June 1977, Salvatore Lupo and Judy Placido, they're discussing, you guessed it, the Son of Sam case in their car when Berkowitz strikes again.
Oh, God.
They're both wounded, but miraculously, they survive.
Unbelievable.
And then, July 1977, the final attack. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violante. First date. Parked under a streetlight. Berkowitz shoots them multiple times. Robert loses an eye, and Stacy, she doesn't make it. This last shooting is particularly jarring. It breaks the pattern. Stacy was blonde, unlike his other victims.
Right.
The city is in a state of complete panic. Is he changing his MO? Is he becoming even more unpredictable?
The fear must have been palpable.
It was. Everyone was afraid. Imagine the fear that gripped the city. This wasn't just about the victims. It was about the erosion of the sense of safety, of normalcy. People were afraid to go out, afraid to be themselves. The Son of Sam had succeeded. He instilled terror into the heart of New York City. And it all happened under the relentless glare of that media spotlight. But you won't believe how this case breaks open. It all comes down to a parking ticket.
Sometimes the most mundane details lead to the biggest breakthroughs.
That's an understatement. Okay, so picture this. The final shooting. Bath Beach, Brooklyn. A young woman, Cecilia Davis, she's walking her dog and she sees a cop ticketing a car parked near a fire hydrant. Minutes later, a man walks by, gives her this creepy look. She notices he's carrying something dark. She rushes home, and then she hears the gunshots.
Oh, wow.
She's terrified, and she doesn't tell anyone for days.
I can't even imagine.
Can you imagine the weight of that knowledge?
No.
But eventually she calls the police. She describes the man, the car, and guess what? The car belongs to David Berkowitz.
Wow. What are the odds?
It gets even crazier. So the dispatcher who takes the NYPD's initial call about Berkowitz, her name is Wheat Carr, her father is Sam Carr, the very same Sam whose dog Berkowitz later claims was possessed by a demon.
Wait a minute, hold on. So the officer calls in about Berkowitz, and it turns out he's the son of the guy whose dog he shot. This is insane.
Right, total coincidence. But it gets even weirder. Wheat, the dispatcher, tells the detective that Berkowitz shot her father's dog. So the detective hears Sam, dog, shot. And suddenly, everything clicks.
Like pieces of a puzzle falling into place.
Exactly. This is where investigative journalist Maury Terry enters the picture.
Yes.
He becomes obsessed with the case.
Really?
Yeah, convinced that Berkowitz is telling the truth about this cult. Terry, he publishes a book laying out his whole theory, and he even persuades the Yonkers Police Department to reopen the case in the 1990s.
Wow, so they actually took it seriously.
I mean, what makes Terry's work so compelling, is that he doesn't just rely on Berkowitz's claims.
Right. No.
He conducts his own investigation, uncovering connections between some of the victims, unearthing these strange details that the original investigation maybe overlooked or dismissed.
Yeah.
He even links the Son of Sam case to other unsolved crimes, suggesting this much wider network, like a much wider network of evil at play.
So this isn't just like a handful of true crime enthusiasts, clinging to some fringe theory.
Exactly. This is a seasoned journalist who's dedicated years of his life to researching this case.
Wow.
And he is convinced that there's more to the story than the official narrative.
It's like peeling back the layers of a conspiracy.
It is.
And each layer reveals something even more disturbing.
Yeah, and the Yonkers investigation, though, it doesn't turn up any concrete evidence. No arrests are made, and the cult theory remains just that, a theory.
Right.
But the doubt lingers.
It does, doesn't it?
Even today, there are, websites, documentaries, podcasts dedicated to uncovering the truth about the Son of Sam.
It's a case that just won't go away.
What do you think it is about this case that continues to capture our imagination, after all these years?
I think it's the combination of the brutality of the crimes, the mystery surrounding them, and the fear, this enduring fear that gripped an entire city. The Son of Sam case, it tapped into our deepest anxieties about random violence, urban decay, and the possibility that evil can lurk in the most unexpected places.
Yeah, like it could happen to anyone, anywhere.
Exactly. And I think it's a story that continues to resonate because it forces us to confront the darkness that exists in the world and the limitations of our own understanding.
That's a good point. I mean, so what are the key takeaways from this deep dive into the Son of Sam case?
Well, I think we've learned that even in seemingly open and shut cases, there could be layers of complexity, hidden motives, unanswered questions.
You can't always know the full story.
Exactly. And the Son of Sam case, it serves as this reminder that The human psyche, it's a labyrinth.
It is.
And sometimes the monsters that we create are reflections of our own fears and anxieties.
That's powerful.
We've also seen the power of belief,
Yeah.
how easily we can be drawn into conspiracy theories, especially when the official narrative doesn't feel, well, complete,
It doesn't feel satisfying.
Right. Yeah, it reminds us that evil, whether the work of one man or many, can leave scars.
Scars that last generations.
David Berkowitz may be behind bars, but the Son of Sam case continues to haunt us.
It does.
A chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk in the shadows of our cities.
And our minds.
For our listeners who want to explore this case further, we've included links to all of our sources in the show notes.
Yes, definitely check those out. Some fascinating stuff there.
Until next time, stay curious, keep learning, and maybe, just maybe, leave the porch light on tonight.